Mr. Oz. You can sit next to Mr. Hall.
We can fix that. All right. Got to go ahead and call our meeting to order. Declare a quorum of 7 trustees present. Takes to item C1, public comment. This one, do we have? We don't have any cards. That's shocking. Okay. Item D, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to management oversight workshop for the CSISD Facilities Department. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent. I'm sorry I'm grinning because Mr. Oz just gave me the evil eye for that. So policy BAA local states the board shall be responsible for overseeing management of the district's major systems. One of those systems is facilities, and today we're going to hear from our executive director, Mr. John Hall, who will present our oversight workshop on facility services. Mr. Hall and Mr. Oz.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale, Mr. Nugent, members of the board. Yeah, I've done a couple of these over the years. Typically what I'll do is I'll go through all of the slides because it's just tons of information, lots of numbers and stuff like that. And if y'all are good with this, I'll go through all of that so we can at least finish within the 2 hours. And then whatever time we have left at the end, have y'all hit me up with some questions or stuff like, any comments or anything at that point, if everyone's good with that. So I'll jump right into it. We got a lot to cover today. This is the Management Oversight Workshop for Facilities Services. As Mr. Martindale said, this is Board Policy BAA Local, which identifies the 6 different departments there. And so I'm lucky enough to have 2 of them out of the 6. They're facilities management and construction. This round is for facilities management, of course. And this is also driven by the Center for Reform of School Systems. I always forget that. I had to put it on there. This is CRSS, which creates the policies and processes used by the school board to ensure the integrity and performance of the district's major business and operational systems. So that's a lot of words as far as the CRSS definition, but here's what it really means, what the board needs to know about how we take care of our business. The first is, are students, employees, and others safe? That's always kind of the overarching concern. Are the district's assets secure? And are the laws and policies being properly followed? And we'll talk a lot about all of those. From a very basic standpoint, does fairness prevail? And are major business systems effective and efficient? So hopefully by the time I hit the finish line on this presentation, we will have answered those six questions with yes to all of those. So the overall presentation is broken down into 4 major pieces. I'm going to be going through a lot of information about program description. We'll be moving into system integrity. As we get closer to the end, we'll be talking about performance metrics, actually measurable numbers that we can look over and see how we're doing, and then finish it up with some policy recommendations. So don't get nervous that the program description takes so long. They're not all going to be that long. So we'll jump right into the program description. So for the program description, that of course is broken down into lots of different bullet points here too. I want to be going through the purpose, policies that govern facilities, kind of show you how we're put together within our department with some organizational charts and kind of how many people we have in the different departments, some budget, costs, and trends information. Also coverage and scheduling for maintenance, custodial, and grounds. Those are the 3 big departments under me that we'll be discussing today, with some other things as well. We'll be talking about employees per acre and per square foot, so you can kind of get an idea of how far we're stretching out our people for the work we do. And we'll touch base a little bit on planning for future projects as well. So with that, I'll start chewing my way through this list of the program description. We'll start with a purpose being to build and maintain safe and efficient facilities for the students and staff of College Station ISD. Pretty straightforward stuff there. Nothing too out of the box on that. What really gets a little confusing are all of the board policies that govern facilities maintenance. There's quite a few of them that overlap into the facilities world. I'm not going to talk about each and every one of these, but I just wanted to kind of give you all a list. We have policy CL, CLA, CLB, CLC, CLE, CS, just lots of different ones, and of course they cover all sorts of different areas of my world. In addition to that, we have some that are specific to just facilities use and rental. That would be policies DGA, FM, FNAB, GE, GKA, GKB, and GKD. And of course, all of these, we have the legal versions of them, and we also have the local versions that have been fine-tuned specifically for College Station ISD over the years as well. And then finally, the other piece of the puzzle for me is facility safety and risk management. Have a few more that apply to that as well. And those are policies CK, CKA, CKB, CKC, and CKD. And you can kind of see, just kind of reading through there, they cover kind of a pretty broad swath of different issues. So the way we're put together and organized in the facilities department is starts off with me. I'm the executive director of facilities, John Hall. I've got Renee Ramirez, assistant director of facilities. I think he's still over there. Hey, Renee. He's my right-hand guy. If it's too tough for me to figure out, I'll get Renee to take care of it for me. We have a couple of supervisors under Renee. That would be Casey Baggett, who oversees our maintenance world. Jerry McMillan, we picked him up a couple of years ago from SSC over at Texas A&M. He's our ground supervisor. Great pickup there. He does a super job for us. Our other department is the custodial department. That's headed up by John Hadley. He's our custodial coordinator, as well as Broderick Ford, our custodial supervisor, works under him. We have a one-person mini department for facilities use and rental, and that's Bunny Kinsinger. She oversees all of the processing of people who want to come in and use our auditoriums and schools and elementary gyms for the schools for the city and several other different entities. And then we'll round off our front office staff with Paula Aker and Lisa Heckler. They are our administrative assistants. So that's kind of what it looks like in words. Here's what it looks like as far as organizational chart goes. You see I'm at the top there. We've got Paula and Lisa kind of take care of everything for everybody. And I don't know if we need to turn the lights down a little bit. It's kind of hard to read on that, but Renee's on the left side there. He covers kind of the bigger piece of the puzzle for us in that he's over all of the maintenance and grounds. And you can kind of see how we've got that going down our organizational chart. Really, the supervisors carry the brunt of that load. And you can see all of the maintenance personnel, which are 25 people, they answer directly to Casey Baggett, and then Casey answers to Renee and so forth. Similar to that is the grounds department with Jerry McMillan. All of our grounds workers, there's 19 of those that answer directly to Jerry. And then we go over to Mr. Hadley's branch of the tree there. Then Broderick Ford is our supervisor there. And Broderick has a lot of folks. He has 116 people working for him. And of course, they're spread out to the different campuses all over the place. You go over to the right there is Bunny Kinsinger, who's our coordinator of facilities and use rental. And then on the far right side, we're not going to be covering it today, but I just wanted to show you how this kind of fits into my world. And that's the coordinator of construction and our two construction inspectors. Over the years, we've kind of finished up a lot of the 2015 bond work. And so those two positions are vacant right now, but we still do have one of our inspectors who still work for us. And we've still got enough projects to keep Tom Stewart busy as well. But we really won't be talking about that. That'll be a different management oversight workshop.
John, those are vacant simply due to the fact they're really there for support through oversight when we have construction from bond projects, correct?
Correct. Basically, we've done all of the big projects from the 2015 bond package, and as they've wound down and slowed down and we have less money, these two guys were not fired or anything. They actually left by their own accord. They both retired. Had a couple old salty guys who'd seen it all and been there, but that's exactly right. They went ahead and retired, and instead of replacing them right now when we don't have the bond funds and the big projects going, we figured we would wait until such a time as we do. So
I'm going to sneak in a question on that then.
Sure.
Do you foresee those positions needing to be filled if this next bond is approved?
I do not, and we've talked about that a lot in-house, and I'm not going to recommend that at this point because the nature of the 2021 bond is mostly deferred maintenance and not big new construction anywhere. So we feel like we can handle all of that in-house with the folks, which, by the way, Rene Ramirez did the same type work. We worked together at the A&M system years ago, so he's a very capable construction manager as well. So we kind of tag team on those. So getting into the maintenance piece of the puzzle, just a quick breakdown. I'm not going to go over this in too much detail, but we have 25 people in our maintenance shop. You can kind of see the breakdown by trade as we go through the whole list. We have 8 HVAC technicians, and those are probably the busiest guys in the whole school district. Except for, you get some of the guys at the bottom, there's only one of them for the whole school district. So we'll be touching base on those coverages just a little bit more.
Are all of those filled, or is there any vacancies?
All of those are filled at this point for the maintenance staff. Excuse me, all of them except for one electrician. We're filling one electrician spot. So we only have 2 of the 3 electricians currently. So the custodial staff is broken down something like this. We have 116 of them total, which breaks down to 19 on our campuses with 97 custodians that back them up that are all distributed out to the different campuses. Our grounds department, we have 19, which breaks out to 4 crew leaders, a couple of specialists for like spray technicians. That's for like herbicides, and they can sometimes spray for bugs and ants and stuff like that too. We have an irrigation technician, and then mostly it's our 12 grounds crew members that go out, and they're the ones that do most of the mowing and weed eating. So one of the things I like to note on here is, I go back to when I first came in here. It was 2007. That when I first came in here, we only had about 1,344,000 square feet. So in the time that since I hired on, so Eddie Colson hired me in years ago. And I started building campuses and new buildings and stuff like that. It's kind of something I like to at least mention for stuff like this is we've actually increased exactly 100%. We've tipped the scales. We just over doubled the square feet since we started this big building push in 2007. And in that same time frame, along with all of those pieces of property that we were building schools on, we also increased our acreage some too by 53%. So it's up to about 491 acres total that we have to maintain. That's not including some of the others that we don't have buildings on. So. Oh, you were about to, I'm sorry, you were about to ask a question.
I'll just wait, you'll answer it. So 491, and then for the acreage the school district has, but we don't maintain those empty lots really, so.
We don't. The big pieces of property.
Yeah, so that's 40, 80 plus 9, another 170. Okay.
Yes, sir, that's correct. In fact, we've got some, like I'll say, gentlemen's agreements with like some of the prior owners to let them still run their cows on them and stuff like that.
We have
until such time as we have to run them off and actually build something on it. So
we do have grazing lease agreements on some of those.
yes, sir. And so just a note that compared to that 100% growth in facility square footage, the maintenance and custodial staff have increased by 47% during that same time frame. So the coverage per square foot and per acreage was a little better back in the day. We still keep everything covered pretty well, but we're stretched a little more thin than we used to be. So talking about some of these square footages just a little bit. For the custodial world, for their work, the industry standard out there per person per 8-hour shift is kind of a range from 18,000 square foot to 22,000 square foot per person. Is what industry standards will tell you from a couple of different sources. 22,000 square feet, of course, being the maximum end of that. So a couple of years ago, we were up to around 27 to 28,000 square feet per person per shift. But just last year, we were able to pick up about 9 more custodians that we spread out to our elementary campuses, which really helped a lot. And if you go all the way back in history, we used to actually have 5 per elementary school. And then instead of hiring new ones, we started pulling one off and creating staffs for the new campuses that we were building to save money. And it worked for a little while, but it sure stretched us out thin. So, but we were able to get a few more people in the game, and that's helped us out quite a bit this year. So our average is down to 23,191 now, which is a whole lot better, a lot more workable. Our overall custodial budget is $430,194, which if you run the math on that, it's about 16 cents per square foot for the year, which is working pretty well for us right now. Custodial wages, the way that breaks out in the 2021 auxiliary pay plan is almost all of our custodians are pay grade 1, which is a minimum of 1054 all the way up to a maximum of 1506. And so for the ones we hire with no prior experience, which are the vast majority of our new hires, that equates to a yearly compensation of $22,092 for that person for the year. So for the same square footage, which is the 2,690,000 and some change there, that's of course what we have to maintain as well within the maintenance department. So that kind of breaks down differently depending on the trade for the coverages, which I'll get into in just a little bit more on these next couple of slides. But our overall maintenance budget is slightly more than the others in that's about $1,421,899. Which breaks out to about 53 cents per square foot. Our best coverage is in the HVAC tech trade, where we have 8 staff, which breaks out to about 336,000 square foot apiece. And the industry standard hits about 300,000 square foot. So I'm going to say we're in pretty good shape for that one. We're just a little bit over the maximum levels, but we cover it pretty well. We have some pretty efficient guys. Our worst coverages are the ones where we only have like 1 person for the entire school district, which we're, if you start looking at industry standards there, it's quite a bit of square feet per person beyond industry standards, but we stretch them out and keep them running the best we can, and I think we cover things pretty well considering those coverages.
John, do you supplement with some contracted labor at times? Is that correct?
We occasionally do. Yeah, that's a great point. As particularly in the painting trade, we have one painter, Ruben. A lot of people laugh and say he's the busiest guy in the whole school district. That guy's running around, never caught up. He's got what you call job security, I guess. But we do occasionally have to pull in a paint subcontractor to help us out. And we don't do so much in the other ones, but occasionally electricians, we have to get somebody to help us out. That would be either a Britt Rice or BCA or something like that. We work through our RFPs every couple of years, and I'll be touching base on some of those as well. Plumbing as well. We do have with Ed Phillips Plumbing and some others that come and help us out. So,
John, do you track the cost of the subcontracting work?
we do.
So I would be curious how it would compare to an additional staff.
It's quite a bit more expensive. I don't have those exact numbers on this particular presentation, but yeah, it costs a lot more when you get like an Ed Phillips Plumbing or a BCA Electric or something like that, because they have to pay all of their benefits and wages and everything as well on their side. So.
Okay.
Sometimes I think they're, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they're called in also because of the type of work and the certification that's required to do that. And we, of course, don't have all of those certifications. So even adding some, you'd still probably have to bring in some contractors at times in order to get certain work done.
But for instance, occasionally, if we have a great big electrical project that jumps up on us that we need to take care of in a hurry, we can't do it with our existing one or two electricians, especially if they're trying to chase down work orders throughout the school district. So that's when we'll pull in someone else to give us a hand just through that one big project and get us through or something. So.
Yeah, I would say excluding like the big projects or like the one time. But if we're bringing in subcontractors for maintenance, I'm just curious if you're tracking that.
We are.
Okay.
We are.
I get where Amanda's going with this. It's a reasonable question as to, Amy, check that relative to what we're spending. What's that equate to from a standpoint of staffing? So it's an excellent point. And of course, as you look at that, we'll have to dissect those specialized type of tasks because we'll have to remove those because odds are we'll have to always bring in somebody to support some specific task. But what does that look like? Could we transfer cost out of that
Right.
into payroll and positions? And I've never thought of that. That's an excellent point.
So going over to our maintenance wages, of course, they vary greatly depending on the trade. You're going to have an entry-level carpenter coming over here is not going to make as much as an old seasoned master electrician or something like that. But it does depend greatly on licensing and certifications required. We are competitive within the industry locally right now and enjoy a pretty high level of retention for our maintenance staff. Excuse me, some of these old guys will be around. They're the ones that we see that we give the little glass plaques to that are 30-year, 35-year guys. Seems like they settle in here and feel like it's a good place to be. So we enjoy that. I just, for point of reference, our lowest minimum, and all of our maintenance staff are in the maintenance shop are either pay grade 5 or pay grade 6. So I just put this in kind of for the range. The lowest minimum in pay grade 5 is $18.10 per hour, and the highest maximum is $29.64. So I don't think we have anyone quite that high, but they're all kind of sprinkled in kind of in that range. So going over to the grounds, acreage to maintain, as I mentioned earlier, we have 491 acres. That's an increase, well, I had a wrong number there. That's 53%. I'm sorry, got a typo on there. It wasn't quite 75% since 2007. So total ground staff is 19 crew members, which breaks out to be about 25.8 acres per person. Industry standards are about 22 acres per person, so we were able to pick up about 3 guys. It's been about 3 or 4 years ago, which helped us out on that too. So we're covering all of our grounds pretty well at this point. We always have to scramble to replace a couple of people when they leave, but. Our overall budget for grounds is $303,478, which breaking out per acre, which always feels a little different than the per square footage, is $618.08 per acre for the year. Our grounds wages, as per the 2021 auxiliary pay plan pay grade 2, which they all fall into, with the exception of I think our irrigation tech maybe. And our spray tech, but they run from a range from $12.14 per hour up to $17.30 per hour. So for the new hires with no prior experience, our grounds worker 1, that would be a yearly compensation of $25,445 for them. We do have a few of our crew members that are in pay grade 3, just a little bit higher, like I'd mentioned, for some of our technicians, that irrigation technician or crew leader. They fall into the pay grade 3, which runs at just slightly higher than that. It goes from about $13.48 per hour minimum up to a $19.20 per hour maximum. And I don't think we've got anybody up at the maximum level. But this equates to a yearly compensation range of about $28,000 to about $40,000 in that range.
John, quick question on your
Yes, sir.
math. If you'll go back, and I could do it real quick, but it's easier just to ask you. On the calculation on the compensation range, that's 40 hours a week for X weeks throughout the entire year. How are you calculating that,
Correct.
that
Yes, sir.
compensation?
Yes, sir. 40 hours a week for 52 weeks.
I was actually thinking the same thing. assuming the grounds folks work the whole year, how about like custodians? What is their?
They're all 260 employees, which basically means all year long, with the exception of just a few days off around Christmas, a couple of holidays. But it's they're mostly working all year.
They're 12 months.
They are also, okay.
Yes.
Do we see a lot of overtime, or is it a straight 40-hour?
Depends on the trade and the time of year, but yes, we do have more overtime. I'll say a lot more overtime for somebody like our painter and a couple of our plumbers. When we have to bring them in on kind of emergency basis type stuff. But we try to keep a pretty good handle on that and not let that swell up. Occasionally, if we have a lot of big events around the schools or something, we might work a Saturday with some of our grounds crews to make sure we've got all of that kind of cleaned up and ready or something. But usually we can do everything we need to do in the 40-hour week.
Or some will creep in for activities like graduations and, those types of things. Friday night football games, clean up afterwards, and, it depends, as
Right.
John mentioned, it'll circle around special activities.
Right, good point. Yeah, we always back up and have a couple of people at all of our big football games and stuff like that. We'll have a couple of custodians and a couple of grounds people to help out with stuff. So we occasionally have to pick up some of that as well.
And I'm sure it's like my own personal grounds budget. It's much higher this time of year than in the winter, right?
Right.
Oh, we're talking about for the grass?
Yeah, after big
exactly.
rains. Yeah.
Right.
That's very true. And we got into kind of a weird situation, just talking grounds for just a second, in that we had so much rain here recently. We got a big bunch of muddy areas that we couldn't get out there with our tractors and mowers like we wanted to. So, yeah, some of the campuses y'all driving around seeing them getting a little bit shaggier. Now that it's dried up a little bit, we're trying to hump it and kind of catch back up in that game. So,
The positions that you're talking about today, are they all benefits eligible, or?
yes, sir. Okay, so driving on to our utilities budget, that's another thing that we process through the facilities department. And what we have is a grand total budget for utilities for paying the electrical, water, sanitary, sewer, gas, sanitation of $3,868,820. I just wanted to just give you all a little quick dose of this, just so you understand that we process this through my department. We track our utility costs carefully each month with per each facility on each one of these three categories. And we try to make adjustments as needed to stay within the budget year if possible. Sometimes we get into situations where we have to use a little more electricity than we would prefer, if it gets really, really hot for a long time, or if it gets really cold and we're trying to keep it warm, kind of like we did for Snowmageddon a couple of months back, which, by the way, helped us out a lot for not having quite as many frozen, busted lines as some of our peers. But we do track that very carefully each month. I'm not going to go over all these numbers or anything, but I just wanted to give you all a little sample of what we look at every month. This is well, we could, if you want to, Mr. Nugent. We could go over each of the numbers.
I think I've got a good grasp.
Yes, sir. So, but just for an example, so for as of the end of April, when we paid all of our bills, that's about 67.64% of the school year, about 2/3 of the school year. And so what we've got is all of our categories. Let me see if I can show the pointer if you can see them. We got all of the gas, all of the electricity, all of the water, sewer, and in the big column on the far right are the grand totals for those. And then, of course, I always drop all the way down to where are we and what's the percentage right now. So you can see on as of the end of April, we were 65.17%, which is just under the 66.64% that we're tracking to. So we know we're tracking pretty well. And we even have at the bottom, what we were doing last year for that too. So that way I can get with Renee or Casey and we can make some adjustments if we're spending a little too much electricity. You can see, just for an example on there, if you can see Barbara Bush Parent Center close to the bottom there for our water. Okay, as of the end of April, we were up at about 219% for that. Well, that was because we had a big water line burst here in Snowmageddon, and it spewed at an incredible rate for about 2-3 days until we were able to chase it down, find it, and get it turned off. So, stuff like that it'll identify some anomalies for us that we can kind of chase down and fix. So. But anyway,
I noticed one thing on there. It seems like a couple of our newer campuses are more expensive totals on there. Is it a square footage? Or, I would have thought we would be getting more efficient with, the building and windows and everything. And so I was just comparing the two high schools, and then the other one that stands out is Wellborn Middle School. Is there, that's something?
No, we're really efficient over there. It's more of a factor of the budget number that was applied to it was a little bit. So.
And I'm kind of with Ms. McAdams on that. CS Middle with a budgeted of 24.5 and expended 45 already on the gas side, just kind of stands out. I don't know if that has anything to do with the natatorium. I don't.
In fact, it does.
It does. That's the only thing.
Keeping the water cool over
Okay.
there, water warm over there. Excuse me. We keep it cool easy enough. But it's
Okay.
Yeah. And
So I can
we
see
did.
that.
We had to heat it quite a bit more.
Okay.
There for a couple of time periods there.
So, I mean, with Wellborn being a budgeted of 20,000 compared to, let's say, Pecan Trail, who's a new school as well at 8, and then obviously, and I'm looking at the gas side because I
I was
think,
looking more at electricity, but yeah.
but
But why are some of the budgets so different?
So
Yeah.
high, I guess.
Yeah.
Why is the consumption so high, or why is the budget so low?
I mean, just with Wellborn being budgeted at 20,000 just on the gas side, and we're into April and we're at 28%. I mean, I guess we're going to hit 20,000 by the end of the year. I would assume.
Well, and I think don't get too
Oh,
locked up
I'm
on the
sorry, I'm just
budgeted
following you where
numbers.
you were talking about.
Because they can do amendments. They may have decided, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, that you needed an increase on the gas budget of X dollars. Instead of going through and putting 1,000 everywhere, it's very possible that they increase the particular budget line item, and then we'll amend to recognize and settle that at the end, if that makes sense. Now, also know this on the electricity and the water. And John, correct me on this, but some of our campuses, in particular south, are BTU versus City of College Station on electricity.
That's exactly correct.
And some of them are Wellborn Water versus College Station. So you have to understand there's different providers embedded in some of our campuses as well. So there's a number of variables. I think what you need to take from this is that we invest a lot of funds in this, and that the number to watch, obviously, he can look at the individual consumption to determine if maybe there's an issue within the camp. That's how we pick up on a lot of maintenance or issues occurring that might not recognize, driving by or even being in there, but for them to chase down particular specific items. But really the number is how are we tracking with the total budget relative to the timing in the year, because you can amend and adjust those budgeted numbers how needed through the course of the year. So I don't think, I wouldn't get too locked up on that one campus, because we'll amend those over. That could very well be just simply increasing the gas budget, and they put it in those two areas knowing they can amend later. So I think the 65% relative to the fact that we're 2/3 of the year through the year, that's important. Make sure we're not way off, bottom line.
Well, and we do, and it's probably important to note, I didn't mention this, but it is a very important note, is that there's a huge variety of square footages and systems. Some of them are water-cooled chiller systems, some of them are air-cooled chiller systems, so your efficiencies are going to be different. Of course, every new one we try to that we build, energy codes are a little more stringent, so we hopefully we're getting more efficient with the newer buildings. But some of the older ones are not quite as efficient. So
Yeah, and it is, we have different providers, just depending on the location of the facility. Because there can be mornings at 6 when we have no power at Wellborn, and that's a conversation with BTU. If there's no power at CSMS, that's a conversation with the city, and vice versa. If you guys remember through the weather, the last ones really to come aboard with being cleared on the boil water notice was Wellborn. Well, that impacted our campuses most south, and Wellborn, Pecan Trail, and Greens Prairie, and not the other campuses. So there's a number of factors.
So we've got all of those guys on speed dial on our cell phones. They'll understand who I am when I talk to them. Renee has them on speed dial, and they know his first name and his family and everything, and they know each other. They talk a lot about stuff like this. So we do try to stay really tuned into these providers as well.
And it's usually, can you give me an update? Because Mr. Martindale is pestering me over when the electricity will be back.
Please give me something to tell Mr. Martindale for an update. That's happened a lot. So,
Question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do we have smart meters or sensors for utilities?
we don't have smart meters on everything. We did start putting some of those in on some of our newer schools and working that through our HVAC controls systems.
Right.
So we're gradually working our way towards that, but we have installed some of them already.
So they're just on HVAC?
Electrical consumption.
And what brought it to mind was the Barbara Bush Parent Center. You said it was 2 to 3 days before you realized it was ruptured. And I thought if we had, because I know for homes, I don't know about, I would imagine it's commercial, but homes you can put sensors that will either automatically shut off the water to your home or alert you. And I didn't know if that would save.
Unfortunately, that's one we did not have that capability on. That's an old vintage 1951 building, the oldest one in the whole school district.
I understand. I just didn't know if we had, or we were maybe consider it in the future.
Yes, sir, absolutely. We're working our way that direction through our newer schools, and we have a few left that we're still trying to smart meter up. But like everything, it just costs money. So. Just finishing up on our utilities budget here, we do get the best utility rates available from the City of College Station for electrical and water service. That was negotiated by someone smarter than I am many years ago. So, but we do enjoy that. And we are required for transparency to post our utilities expenditures on our website for public information. So Mr. Martindale gets that information from Paula Aker every month, and he puts it on our website. So if you're diligent enough, you can dig in there and find it. It takes me a few minutes to find it, but it's there. So driving on, we're going to talk about deferred maintenance just a little bit in our general fund. One of the biggest challenges that we have year over year is planning for deferred maintenance and small projects as we go forward. Historically, we've had a capital outlay budget that was available as a consistent and predictable yearly source of funding. And a lot of y'all have heard a lot of this bond planning stuff we've been talking about recently, but it covers primarily stuff like carpet replacement, painting, floor replacement, HVAC unit replacement, roof replacements, that sort of thing. Of course, other things too, but these are kind of the big ones. And so trying to track those out and plan for those. We used to have what was called a rolling 5-year replacement schedule, in that we knew how much money we were going to get each year. And so we could say, okay, next year it's going to be South Knowles' turn. And the year after that, it's going to be Southwood Valley's turn. And then the year after that, and so on. Things changed back in about 2011 or so. There were some budget reductions mandated for all public education 2011, and really put the squeeze on the facilities department. That was before I came over, by the way. I was still just doing construction at that point, but much of the deferred maintenance budgets had to be removed, really all the way down to zero at one point. And so now we rely on either budget amendments when funds are available, or bond funds. And so that's why you hear so much of the discussion about deferred maintenance in the 2013, 2015 bond fund, why you hear it in the 2021 bond funds, because this is really our primary source for picking these items up now. So prior, just to give you a little idea on the capital outlay and the deferred maintenance piece, prior to 2011, depending on the year, the original budget for that was like anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million annually. And so my predecessor over there was able to do those 5-year rolling schedules, and everything was a little more easy to communicate and plan and communicate with our principals, and they felt good that, okay, I won't get it this year, but 2 years from now, if I can just wait it out, it'll be my turn. So, which, like I said, is a little more difficult now. And since then, the original budget for the capital outlay has gone all the way down to zero to the $600,000 range. So that really drives a lot of things in my world for being able to plot and plan and figure out what we can do on the individual campuses as we move through the years. Of course, what we do is we go with the bond funds. The 2013 and 2015 bond deferred maintenance funds were really the big catch-up. I came over in 2013 to pick up the facilities department after my predecessor left, and that was right when we had that $0 capital improvement for a while. So right away, I started whining to Mr. Martindale and Mr. Dr. Ely and some others that we really need some money for catch-up here.
In 2013?
Well, I'm sorry, that was 2015.
No, I was whining with you at that time.
Oh, that's right.
You weren't
were the one
whining,
whining
to me.
that we needed to do
I
more
was probably
stuff over
sitting there with you whining to those folks.
Thank you for that correction. All right, you weren't in the central office quite yet at that point, but well, and so we started saying, hey, we really need to do some catch up there. And 2013 we had about 12 million. 2015 we had about 5 million, and that was absolutely our lifeblood for getting back in the game with some of this stuff. So. And we've stretched out, as y'all know. I come every couple of months with one more little stretched out for the 2015 bond. We're down to Mrs. Dries gave me $125,000 more to spend just a few days ago, and Renee had it spent in about 10 minutes, I think, or something. When I talked to him, he's got a list, of course, probably 3 or 4 times that long of stuff we'd like to do. But so we've got some of those POs already rolling for that. And of course, probably worthy of mention in the 2021 Bond Planning Committee work includes some of the recommendations for deferred maintenance. In fact, that's most of the bond planning for this round, and so that really helps us catch up on some of these identified needs.
John, do you happen to know the number on the 2021? What number of that it would be out of the 83 million is deferred maintenance?
All of the prior. We had the presentation by Ken Hutchins the other day. I want to say the priority one stuff and overall the whole bond package would be 83,154,000 and some change, if memory serves. The priority one stuff was a little over 70 million, and then we had a couple of athletics referendums as well. So.
And I think she's asking you more specific as to what of that 83 applies, or would you consider deferred maintenance?
Oh, a percentage of the 2021
and
bond
I can't
that
off
applies
the
to
top of my head. There's HVAC line items in there. I guess you could speak to the renovations to some degree. I don't remember a specific. Kimberly, I don't think
You've calculated, yeah.
it's by project and campus. I don't know if specifically denoted as deferred maintenance.
I could take out buses and technology
Yes, ma'am.
and the
Land.
fine arts
Land.
and land and almost everything else.
It's really easier to figure that than it is what
Right.
I'd say it's probably in the range of 85 to 90% is deferred maintenance type, but that's just kind of off the top of my head there. So.
Would you, yeah, go ahead, you can ask.
Would y'all consider she mentioned technology, but would y'all consider the technology infrastructure deferred maintenance? I would assume.
Well, you want to catch this one?
Yes.
Good thing you're sitting there.
Yeah. I know.
That's why I had her move over.
I consider that deferred maintenance because it is part of the building. Many times there's already some of that cabling and wiring in there. It's a matter of expansion. So I consider much of that technology infrastructure deferred maintenance.
I mean, I think I look at this, these are my thoughts. If you think about the renovations at Consol, the restrooms and the fine arts areas and et cetera, and you think of Southwood Valley. I mean, several of you have been in Southwood Valley, and you think about the flooring and the paint and those types of things. I consider those types of renovations to be deferred maintenance because at some point you're going to have to address painting and you're going to have to address old carpet or flooring. So I guess really those renovations, which are a significant portion, I think, of that 70 million, I would consider those deferred items because otherwise, if John's tracking $1 million a year in his budget, he's probably chipping away at that through the course of time. In the 2011, I wasn't over here at that point in time. I know the district had to cut millions of dollars, and I think it was through the budgeting process. And if I'm not mistaken, John, I think there was even some absorption of positions, in custodial positions and those types of things that we have worked to put back through the course of the year. So there were a lot of things hit way back in 2011. Then, of course, when you come out of that and start trying to fix that, then we have we were fortunate then to become a Chapter 41 district. So then we started dropping money in recapture. So those things come into play, and unfortunately, more times than not, John's budget's the one that gets adjusted because you have to make decisions about those types of things versus what do we do to do our best not to impact what is happening in the classroom. So you just, and those are things through just the course of time and kind of why we sit today. And feel free, John, to disagree or if I was off mark on some
Oh, no,
of those.
sir, I'd say you're exactly on that. That 2010 to about 2012 timeframe was just brutal for state funding and really the facilities department, they call it maintenance and operations at the time, really took a hit. And it's taken some years to kind of dig back out and get back in the game. So.
I just want to add, because I was here in 2011 when we had to go through all those cuts, right? And it is good that you're going over the history because, I've already had people say, why are we having to pay for paint and things like that in a bond, right? And this is why, right? And it obviously wasn't just CSISD, it was the whole state of Texas, the significant cuts in 2011, and exactly right. If we were going to keep, teachers in the classrooms and we had to cut somewhere, and so it was almost all in deferred maintenance. And then we're fortunate that we've had a community that has continued to support the bonds to pay for those things. We've been paying for it that way for a big chunk of it for the last 10 years. So
I just did a quick calculation based on the list, and it's at 25%, so it'd be 75% is deferred, but really I think it's more like 80 because some of these, like in fine arts, has some deferred maintenance in it. So he was real close. I would say it's 80% deferred maintenance. Right. I took the ag facility out, buses, land, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so during that time frame when things did get pretty tight, I was on the construction side of the house and I had bond money and I was building new buildings, and so I felt like I was in pretty good shape. And then I came over to the facilities department. I was like, wow, it was a real eye opener for me, truly, because there were some major challenges to overcome. So we'll shift gears into the just a couple of quick slides here on facilities use and rental. We've got school board policy GKD was one of them that I'd referenced earlier about dictating non-school use of school facilities. We do have a fee schedule that's referenced in our board policy, but it's not included in the board policy, which that's what we charge for different groups who want to come in. We have different levels. If they're nonprofits, they don't pay as much. The city of College Station, typically they don't pay any for our gyms for some of their intramural programs and Parks and Rec stuff like that. But we do have a couple of pieces that are not processed through my office, and that would be a rental of the natatorium and then the athletics fields and the gyms for our two high schools and Wellborn Middle Schools. That processes through the athletics office. So that makes it a little cleaner because most of that stuff is athletics related, and so it made sense that Mr. Reed processes those. We started doing that in about 2018. So.
Just out of curiosity, does that not include CSMS or AMCMS?
It does not. We were just opening up Wellborn Middle School at that time, and we needed more athletics world rentals, I'll say. And in addition to the College Station High School and Consol High School, we have lots of sports teams, lots of club teams out there who really need some space. And so what we decided at that point was that Wellborn Middle School would be really held for that kind of stuff and not available for the city of College Station, because they voraciously gobble up every gym that they can that we allow. After all of our stuff has been already scheduled. So that was a good balance that we worked out at that time, and works for the city, works for the club teams, works for all of us.
So club teams don't use AMCMS anymore or anything like that?
They still do,
Okay,
but they also use this kind of stuff too. It's really the other two for CSMS and AMCMS. It's kind of a one-off, that we'll use. Mostly those are other organizations, and they're we'll use the cafeterias for different meetings and stuff like that, so.
There wasn't a whole lot of anything occurring this past year. But
Exactly.
that is the practice prior to. And a lot at the high schools and those types of things, you end up with playoffs and other school districts calling the athletic department, say, hey, can we have our playoff basketball game or volleyball game or football or baseball there? And so that's kind of why you see a difference in the scheduling contact.
Mr. Trot, I don't think this forum is necessarily the appropriate one to have any in-depth discussion about it, but to follow up on our, safety and security discussion in executive session the last meeting, when it comes to the rental policies and outside use of the facilities, is there much thought given to safety and security issues when it comes to who we rent to and when we rent and follow up and everything else that could come from that?
Yes, sir. I'd say we do have some of that. In fact, we don't let anyone rent our facilities without having a full information sheet on them, who's the responsible party, their contact information, and all of that information. We do check them out in the background to make sure they're a legitimate company. If they're a nonprofit, we require them to provide nonprofit status of some sort of documentation. And in addition to that, when they use one of our facilities, we always have a building supervisor present with College Station ISD, so that we can unlock the door for them, make sure everything looks okay, the air conditioning is working and the lights turned on. If they're not, I give Renee Ramirez a call. And then when they're through, we lock up behind them and make sure. So we always provide a building supervisor for exactly that purpose. So that gets us through the first big hunk of the presentation, and now we can kind of get into a couple of the other ones. The next one being system integrity.
So let me
Yes, sir.
ask you how we're tracking, because I'm wondering if this might be a good just 10-minute window to stop and let folks grab lunch and return. But tell me how we're tracking on time, John.
Oh, I can talk as fast as y'all want at the end. So works for me. If you're going to twist my arm and get me to not talk for a few minutes,
Good answer,
I can
John.
certainly abide, Mr. Martindale.
Yeah, let's take a show, if Mr. Nugent and board members, if that's okay. It just
Well, after Engage to Learn the other day, I'm thinking 90 seconds is plenty of time to get back there.
I'll set a timer if you can come back when my phone goes off. Let's give everybody 5 or 10 minutes to grab some lunch and return, and we'll pick up.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, I think we're positioned to start again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale. I'm glad y'all have some sandwiches in front of you. I wouldn't want anyone getting hangry on me here. So I did want to mention something too. We were going over the organizational chart earlier with the construction side of the house, with the construction coordinator position being vacant. I didn't mention that Renee Ramirez has been covering that. It's not like it's just not happening or anything like that. Renee, of course, picked up that too, and I've been backing him up on that play too. But yeah, we have had the duties of that position covered. It was just unfilled right now. Okay, so I'm going to jump on in then to the system integrity portion of the presentation. Just a couple of overall statements here, so you'll know how I feel about it, how we feel about this, and that is we're committed to fair and open bidding for vendors and subcontractors. We hold each other mutually accountable to a high standard of ethics in our department, and we are transparent in our processes and open and honest in our communications. We put it all on the table, and we juggle out a lot of stuff, and we go to lengths to make sure that we're being fair and open and honest in everything that we do. One of the things that we do is couple of times, in fact, just Tuesday night, we had a couple of these on there for competitive seal proposal process for annual contracts that can be renewed a couple of times. These are for such things as plumbing, electrical, paving. Those were the three that we had the other day. We also have all sorts of other ones that that didn't come up to be renewed this year. So didn't come up to be reprocessed, for the CSP this year. So we have several of those in place. Those are for materials suppliers, for contract labor primarily. We also have that for major equipment purchases, and a lot of times we'll utilize the buy board or purchasing cooperatives. Do a lot of coordination with our folks about that, and a lot of coordination with Mrs. Drozd about that as we get the board memos all put together for that. Above and beyond that, we also have routine purchases. Of course, we go through a purchase order system, whereas we provide any vendor, anyone we're buying stuff from, we provide a purchase order for them and track that very carefully to make sure we've got everything achieved or received before we pay anything. Occasionally, we do have emergency purchases, which we have to scramble down and get some piece of plumbing equipment or a part to get something fixed in a big hurry, and we are allowed to expedite the processing of such things with filling that out on a piece of paper that we carefully track, and then retroactively assign a PO number after the fact. So that gives us just a little bit of I'll say fluidity to roll with a couple of things that get urgent in our world. Hiring and
John,
training.
are you saying those things go directly through you, or do those go through the purchasing department?
Straight from us.
Some things go directly.
Generated from us. Yeah, the purchasing department, of course, is always tuned in. So is the business department. We all kind of keep interrelated. But am I missing something?
Well, I think what you're asking is, so there's different levels. So normally a level for, what I call a spot purchase order, and that's what he's saying, that he can issue it, is smaller for other departments. It's a little larger for transportation and maintenance because of the need for a part right now. So let's say that's 500, a purchase order or a request, a requisition, I always call it, it's a request. You request before you have a purchase order. Then up to a certain amount goes to the purchasing director, Ms. Carmela Schaefer, and I think that's 3,000. And then if it's the purchase order is over that, either Mr. Lassiter or myself approve them. So we actually implemented that, those thresholds this year, piloting it with maintenance and transportation. So that's kind of the threshold. And if there is something that's over his, but it broke, Lisa, one of his administrative assistants, is good about calling this, said, hey, we put something in and they really need it this afternoon. Can you or Mr. Lassiter approve it? So Thad checks it every day, just so that we don't get behind. But if there is an emergency and over that threshold, they just call us and say, this is a requisition number, so we can review. Does that answer your question?
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Yeah, that's an additional layer of accountability that I really appreciate. If I was to get crazy and want to do some bizarre thing, I'm hoping somebody out there would catch me and tackle me before I could do it. So, talking about the hiring and training process for just a little bit. Typically, we do most of our recruiting through our CSISD website. Of course, we got word of mouth too, but CSISD website and newspaper ads. For custodial, we're actually piloting an auxiliary job fair this summer. We're going to do the first one of these for us. This is historically over the last couple of years, and you'll see some numbers here in a little bit, that keeping custodial staff here and good retention has been a huge challenge for us. So, but talking about the minimum qualifications for everyone, they must pass a fingerprinting process, which allows a little background check on them. Must be at least 21 years of age, hold a Texas driver's license, particularly if they're driving any district vehicles, and it may require an additional certification or license depending on the position. For instance, you don't want to hire an electrician without an electrical license of some sort, insecticide application, whatever the case may be particular to that position.
Amy, the auxiliary job fair, that's in July, correct? And we're housing that out of Consol. Okay.
We're actually starting the planning somewhat this week and then finalizing it next week. But I think it's July 19th, and we're going to house it out of A&M Consolidated High School, the library. So they'll have some interview rooms, computers set up, running it from 4 to 7, trying to catch people kind of towards the end of the day when they have time to come.
You are working, obviously, in conjunction with Human Resources. And this
Yes.
is for
Dr.
It's
Dixon.
beyond custodian, it's for auxiliary, bus
It's for,
drivers, custodians.
it's all auxiliary food service and transportation. I think in the maintenance, just because of the nature of certifications and all, it's probably going to be limited to custodial. But transportation, food service, and maintenance, it'll be specific to them.
How many positions are we looking to fill?
Wow, I don't know offhand how many they each have. I know that in transportation, they ended with quite a few vacancies. We had quite a resignations in the last 6 weeks or so. So I don't have the exact number. And sometimes, especially in food service, and this is the wrong department, but she gets a lot of her resignations over the summer. So she likes to have a few in the wings, just ready to go. And she may even bring them on as what you would typically say subs, and he can custodians as well, where they're on call. And then if we have that resignation, they get to move to a permanent, so.
I know some things playing into that, Amanda, and I think it will begin to shift a little bit, or obviously through the pandemic and unemployment benefits influence some of those in particular, depending on the pay grade of the position and those types of things. So I know that had an impact, and I think as we transition out of that, then we'll begin to see kind of a move back to where we were before.
In my world, it's about 8 positions. We got about 5 custodians, which is the best we've been in a long time, only 5. But we've got 1 electrician and I think 2 grounds guys that we're trying to replace right now. So, but yeah, primarily for us, this is a custodial issue. So driving on with the hiring and training process, other qualifications we need people to be able to follow written and verbal instructions, and also the ability to communicate effectively. So for training, of course, once again, it's dependent on the job, job specific. May require certification or license for plumbing, electrical, fire alarm, which is a big one for us. Herbicide, insecticide, you can see the different requirements that we might have. So, and then of course everyone gets trained on safety. That's the overarching thing that we all cover frequently. Our supervision process is in that, of course, everybody on the organizational chart you see, everyone is within the facilities department, myself excluded from that. We're all supervised by the department coordinator, department supervisor, assistant director of facilities, or myself, executive director of facilities. We try to keep our span of control appropriate for that, and not have one person who has to supervise and evaluate 50 people or something like that. So we try to keep that balance out. And of course, I answer to Mrs. Drozd myself. So, and then I like to put this in there that we part of our supervision process is that we praise in public and we discipline in private. We're big believers in that. And just talking about that just a little bit more, talking about the praise in public, that's what we prefer to do, right, is the praise in public. We've got something we call a True Grit Award. It's kind of a picture of John Wayne with his cowboy hat on, and for the people who have done a really good job through some difficult situation, we'll pull those up in front of everyone and embarrass them and slap them on the back a little bit. And we also have retirement meals for everyone. When we have someone that is retiring, we'll have a little presentation for them and tell them how much we appreciate them. On our last day of work before the Christmas break, this is probably the favorite one of the year. We feed everybody and we let everyone cook on our pit. We get our old barbecue pit out there and let the guys throw some coals in them, and they bring their hunting, venison and all of that kind of stuff, and they have more fun with that and laugh and catch up a little bit out there, and so they love that. That's the best event of the year for us for stuff like that, probably. We need to get Mr. Horak on the hook for this one. Also, and we just had this just recently, of course, was our end of the school year presentation of years of service awards and other awards. Kind of, we had quite a few of those this year, and we typically provide a lunch meal. So we didn't do that at the end of the COVID year. So we upped our game a little bit this year and splurged and had Rudy's barbecue for them, and they wolfed it down. It was a fun event. So. But when the praise in public doesn't work, unfortunately, sometimes we have to do the discipline and private side of it. So we'll start off with, bring them in and infractions are verbally warned first. We'll give them a couple of rounds of, talking to them, telling them how serious this is. If they continue, we'll start doing the write-ups. Which we don't like to do, but sometimes it's necessary in this business. Then if they keep on doing it after that, whatever the issues are, usually it's absenteeism that we have to keep processing more and more disciplinary write-ups, and that's really at that point we start getting our human resources office involved with them, with us and them, and start working through that process, which unfortunately sometimes ends up in somebody getting terminated. We really try to avoid that if we can, but sometimes that's the way it works. So we are going through a process now that we've just started here about a month ago, and that would be that's our facilities department procedural guidelines. And what we've always used in the past, up until about a month ago, we strictly went by the CSISD employee handbook for all sorts of specific issues. But what we're working now is this book handbook basically for the facilities department that addresses specifically how we deal with such things as safety meetings and expectations, time clock procedures, how and when to clock in and clock out, what's acceptable, what's not, missed punch times, all of that sort of thing. Overtime assignments and availability, how that's distributed. Everyone asks for overtime. Not everyone's really ready to do it when you ask them, say, okay, tonight then. And it's like, well, so we also have calling in procedures clarified. If you're calling in sick for a morning and you're not going to show up to work, you don't need to do that at noon of that day. You need to do that before work starts. Give us a fighting chance to, at least know what's going on. And of course, we're going to clarify our vacation procedures as well. We do have a couple of time frames during the course of the year where we try to not allow vacation and have people actually show up. This is more prevalent for custodial, like right before we open up a campus for, the beginning of the year. That couple of days before then, we really need all hands on deck. So, and we're clarifying all of that. Talking about safety just a little bit, as Mr. Horick mentioned, I think a little bit earlier, that is a big part of my world personally, because I'm the emergency management coordinator for the CSISD, which makes me responsible for, you can see the list of bullet point items. There's a lot of different things I have to coordinate district-wide, including safety audits, coordination back and forth with Texas School Safety Center. They need submissions to them from time to time that if we miss, we're in trouble. And so we've got, and bottom of the list here is the update of the 833-page MEOP document. That's the couple of big binders full of stuff that we have to keep up with every year for our safety program for the whole school district. Now that's me personally. Now, safety coordination with facilities, we got a couple of other things. Of course, the safety audits that I mentioned before, that also applies to facilities. They come out and check us for, making sure that electrically and, the cutting torches and all of the different things that we have to deal with are safe. We also have to deal with OSHA, in particular for our construction projects. We keep a very close tabs on our MSDS sheets everywhere. Some of y'all may be aware of what those are, but basically it's any material we deal with, you have to understand what the potential hazards are and that sort of thing. We have quite a bit of coordination with the fire marshal. We have yearly inspections. We're about to go through a lot of that this summer as they go around and check out all of our schools, tell us all the paper decorations for trees at elementary schools and all of that stuff that we need to take down because they're fire hazards, that sort of thing. They check out our alarm systems, our fire sprinklers, all of that sort of thing. We also have asbestos reporting and updates to process occasionally. And then, of course, if we have any kind of workers' comp injury, we have accident reports that have to be processed on that as well. We do have a little bit of a facility safety incentive program. If well, first of all, we have regular monthly safety meetings that with specific topics, whether it's ladder safety or sharpening blades on a lawnmower safety, whatever, depending on the department. But really the incentive piece of this falls into the safety luncheons and breakfasts. So a couple of times a year, if we don't have any significant safety issues, we'll try to reward everyone with a safety luncheon, or sometimes we do safety breakfast. We'll bring in some breakfast tacos to emphasize that hey, thank you for being safe and keep up the good work. And when we don't have them, everyone sorely misses them. So it's like, well, be safe this time. Maybe we can pick it up the next round. So through the facilities department, we do have quite a bit of coordination with outside agencies. I'm not going to go too in depth on these, but you can see City of College Station is the big one for us. Fire department, police department, public works, planning and development for getting permits for our projects, utilities, of course, and then parks and rec. We just have tons of stuff back and forth that we communicate and coordinate with them. Recently, a couple years back, we instituted the Brazos County Sheriff's Office. We started using school resource deputies as opposed to, the CSPD. We used to have school resource officers. So that's a big coordination just about on a daily basis there. Occasionally we have some stuff with Texas A&M University, not too often. And you can see the list of the others there that we, I'll just say occasionally we have coordination to do if TxDOT, with some highway constructions and that sort of thing all the way through. If we have our power outage out at Welborn Middle School, we're all calling up BTU and saying, hey, what's going on, that sort of thing. So I've got a couple of slides here for just what we experience typically as facilities challenges. These are some of the things that were and I've just kind of touched on them on some previous slides, but these are some of the things that are consistent year over year for trying to get on top of a little bit. One of is the ability to actually schedule replacement of the finished systems in older schools. I won't go on and on about that because we had a pretty good discussion about it earlier. But that's about the funding and how to get all of that scheduled, as we go through. And of course, the deferred maintenance and the bond stuff is a lifesaver for us in that game. The new hiring starting hourly wage of $10.54. It is very comparable to the market comparison done by TASB. We just got that just recently. I think Mrs. Roz just shared some of that information with you in the workshop the other day. But it still does make it pretty difficult to hire and retain. It's difficult when these people with no experience can find no experience needed jobs for a couple of dollars more. So that's always kind of a challenge for us to keep a full staff for that. We haven't had a full custodial staff yet, but we're hoping we can get close here soon. And then finally, one of the other things that is a challenge is the fact that I'm carrying the CSISD safety program within the facilities department. When many of the components are really managed elsewhere. A lot of the pieces of the safety program are command and control, kind of in the superintendent's office maybe. Risk management and insurance, that's out of the business office. Communications, you kind of go through the list here. Suicide prevention, that's part of the threat assessment program. It's kind of tied into medical. That really gets out of our area of expertise within the facilities department, but we do a lot of coordinating with the people who do know about that. Technology, of course, David Hutchison and I, we talk just every day about different things, in particular to the safety program too. And then, of course, law enforcement coordination with Brazos County Sheriff's Office. So quite a bit of those things are not really specific to facilities, but we juggle our way through it. We've been doing it, well, I've been doing it since about 2014, I guess. So, but it is a huge amount of work to do that. So really, we're now ready to go into the third portion of the presentation, which is performance metrics. That's when I start sharing numbers. How do we measure up for what it is that we're trying to accomplish with all of these other things? So when we're talking about performance metrics, what we're really talking about is what measures do we use in facilities to determine how well we're doing. We've got a couple of pieces of the puzzle there. First, we have to develop the metrics. Are we even looking at the right things? And then develop the performance targets. You know, if we got the right metrics, but maybe we need to adjust the scale up or down a little bit to make it a little more stringent or a little less stringent. And of course, one of the reasons we present this is so that we can get some board input on these metrics. Are these the correct metrics that we're using, that you're about to see? Are our performance targets right? And then annual reports on the performance. I think with the COVID, we didn't get one out, I don't think, last year, but we do update our metrics yearly, and I'm sure we'll be getting back into that rhythm this year. So our metrics fall into a couple of different categories: safety, productivity, quality, timeliness, and customer satisfaction. So I'm going to hit metrics on each of these 5 categories for how we track our progress with that. So we'll start off with safety, as we usually do. One of the things that we have looked at for years is the number of workers' comp accidents. Seem like every year we have a few more than we want, which is, you know, typically anyone working, if they twist their knee or hurt their shoulder or whatever the case may be, that they've got an accident that keeps them from working. So our standard has been 15 or fewer claims per year for safety facilities wide. And so you can see what we're looking at for over the years. I did add a column to this, and that we noticed a couple of years back that it was, I'll say, what we consider disproportionately high in the custodial side of the house compared to the number of people we have. So you can see as we've gone through the years, 17, 18, we had 17 claims, 14 of those were custodians. And you can kind of see how they go through there. So we have not been hitting the standard that we've been trying to hit as far as 15 or fewer claims. I don't know if we need to consider maybe bumping that up. Maybe a more appropriate level would be 20 or something. But right now we're hanging with the 15, and we're trying desperately to get there. 2020, 21, the year we're in right now, and I should have put year to date on there. But so far we've had 20 claims this year. 15 of those have been custodial. So hopefully we won't have any more as we go through the rest of the summer.
John, a suggestion on this one, because
Yes, sir.
when you use raw data, you're not accounting for the size of your department, whether it's larger or smaller. So I'm wondering if you take the 15 and the number of employees within those respective departments and create a metrics that uses a percentage, so that because if we add capacity in that department over the time, you continue to use the 15, it'll become more and more difficult because you have more employees. So that's just a thought. As I'm sitting here watching, 20 would be a good number if your department had grown by, 20 or 30 people over the course of a couple or 3 years.
Great point, because we picked up a couple more hires, but last year we did pick up about 9, so that does jump our numbers up a little bit there too. I could definitely convert that into percentages future and see what a good standard would be percentage-wise then. Great point.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing, but then also ask, so about the standard, I mean, where did the standard come from? I mean, a lot of your other ones, you had industry standards that you were able to use. Where did that number come from?
We didn't really have an industry standard on this one. We just, we kind of discussed this amongst ourselves and said, what do we feel like is a good starting point for this? And so there wasn't a whole lot of science behind the establishment of the standard, honestly. So
I would assume there would be something out there that you could probably find for workers' comp, again, based on the number of employees you have. Because my first impression is it seems like a lot, but I don't really know what, it seems like I need to have some benchmark data to compare it to, something outside of our district.
Well, we could certainly dig and see if there's some industry standards that are particular to some of these departments that we're in as well too. Sure.
I mean, I would say in support of the standard, based off of you and Mr. Ramirez's experience in the industry. In a previous life, I was in the same industry. You kind of can judge that based off of what you've experienced year over year and things like that. So not disagreeing that there's probably some data out there, but I think if we had to set something, I could see where maybe 15 could come into play.
It was definitely more art than science
Right.
when we came up with that. So.
Right.
One thing that I've always been interested in, and I should have seen it when I reviewed it, is I'm interested in those claims and how many of them had lost days of work.
Yeah, what's the result?
Workers'
That was my
comp
second
claims,
question. What
because,
happens?
I mean, you may have something and then they can move to light duty for a week. So maybe we can add some of that information that might kind of put it into perspective so you can see the severity. And sometimes it's a miss 1 to 3 or you miss a week. So I would put them into categories. So how many days missed for that? So that might help.
Right,
And I
this
guess in
is-
all those claims, was it determined that we were liable?
We were not found to be liable on anything. So,
And yeah, this is exactly why we do this, to discuss and see if we want to make adjustments. So, good deal. Thank you, John.
And it ran the gamut on the custodial side of the house from, no lost time at all, just reporting the injury, all the way up to, we had one person who was out for 16 months and then finally went ahead and just retired. So where they were never able to come back. So kind of runs the whole gamut there. So facilities metrics for productivity, the number of work orders is what we look at for that. Are we doing a good job of closing out our work orders? And what we've used as a standard is to close out 98%, because we always have a few in the system that are impossible to accomplish, and so. But we want to hold on and see if we can work that into a possible deferred maintenance type situation, some of that kind of thing. So, but you can see over the years that we've done a pretty good job with the number of work orders, and we've actually. And here's an anomaly that I can't explain, is how the number of work orders have actually decreased over the years. I don't know if we're keeping our buildings in just a little better shape, or I'd like to think that anyway. But our 98.9%, 99.6% that we used to be up there, we're a little bit lower this year on our year to date. I'm hoping we can close out more of these during the summer months and maybe get ticked back up over that 98% for closing out of our work orders. Also for productivity is the total square footage cleaned every day by our custodial staff. And I touched on this just briefly earlier, but the standard, the industry standard, is 22,000 square foot max per custodian. So you can see just a couple of years ago, we were all the way up at 27,000 square foot, and I'll just put a little asterisk by this one. That's assuming every person shows up. No one calls in sick. We have a full staff at every single campus. I don't think I've ever had a miracle day like that yet since I've been around. We're always fighting people. So the actual numbers are probably more than that every day. But it was around 27,000 for a while, and then we were able to pick up some additional custodians, and that's what dropped our square footage per custodian number down to 23,000, which is way more workable now than it had been in the past. Total acreage for productivity, the total acreage maintained by our ground staff is another one that we try to keep track of. And I'd mentioned this one a little bit before, that 22 acres max per grounds worker was the standard. That is an industry standard. And we were right on top of that back in 2007, 17 and 18. You can see that was right at 22 acres. So we were right in there where we needed to be on the max end of that. And we did pick up a couple more schools in 18 and 19, 20, which is what bumped it up to 491. We're still doing it all with the same 19 people, and that's ticked our acreage up just a little bit. But what I'm finding is that we're able to keep up with that, and so that's not something that's killing us. If you'd asked me, would you like to have a couple more grounds people? The answer is always going to be yes, but I don't think that's our most pressing need at this point. Okay, so we get into some metrics over quality for the maintenance side of the staff. What we're looking for is the number of staff members with licenses or certifications. We want to make sure that we have a good qualified staff who really know their particular piece of the puzzle. And you can see over the years we had 24 maintenance members within our maintenance department, and out of those we had 14 that were either certified or licensed, which is a pretty good percentage for our world. Some of them don't require it, like carpenters, that sort of thing. But we had 58.3% for a while. We were able to pick up earlier this year another electrician, which bumped our numbers to 25 and 15. So that helped our percentage just a little bit there. So we do have a very highly qualified staff within the maintenance department. One of the things for quality, since we don't require licenses and certifications as much in grounds, we do have like one for our herbicide guy, but that would be our annual turnover rate. Are we able to keep people around for a long time? We equated that with a good standard of quality, and we said what we were looking for that would be an annual turnover rate of less than 20%. Because that is a level where people can jump jobs and find pay raises quickly, and a lot of them do. So what we want to do is have a good organization, good quality, so they'll stick around and work for us. And you can see, and I did add on there too, one person equals 5.3% when you're talking about 19 people there. So that equates to, we lost a couple of people over the years. It was 16% for a couple of years. Last year it jumped up to 21%, which is 4 people. And so far this year we've lost 4 more. So I'm hoping we can hold that and not get any worse on the retention. But usually it's, we occasionally will have someone retire, but really mostly for the grounds world, it's they found another job that pays just a little bit more. Custodial, using the same type of mindset for our annual turnover rate for that, we were looking at applying the same 20% to that part of the world. Only that part of the world is a little different. With our initial hire on is just a little bit lower. There for a while we had our square footages were a lot. We found we were hiring back in 2017-18 is really, and I'll say in years prior to that it was like 20%, 23%, and it kind of jumped up starting in about 2017. We found that people would come in and work for just a month or 2 and then leave, and then of course that would hurt these turnover rates as well, and we just were fighting constantly to replace people. So those numbers kind of jumped up a little bit. In 1920 we had all the way up to 37%. I was really thinking that we had done a little bit better than this until we ran the numbers just here in the last couple of weeks to get ready for this presentation, and sure enough it was 37% again. So we're hoping we can hold there and not lose any more through the course of the summer. And by the way, I'll say that the big glut of these happened about, gosh, I'm going to say about 6 weeks ago. We were only down about 3 people or 4 people in our custodial staff to all of a sudden, within about a week, we were down 15 people, and all of the campuses were running short schedules and everything. So this one has been a wild one and a recent one that we've had to kind of fight to catch up on. So,
John,
yes.
obviously you've said, you said it's always been a struggle with the custodial staff. You mentioned some kind of some of those rewarding things you did and it sounded like maybe with more of the maintenance teams and grounds team. Do the custodial teams participate in some of those meals and breakfasts, the safety, all the safety stuff?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we went from inviting them, and we would just invite them, and a lot of the custodians would not show up. They didn't feel comfortable, wanted to stay on their home campus or whatever, until finally I made it mandatory. And then as of our last one, when we served them Rudy's barbecue the other day, not to be too mean, but I said, no, you've got to show up. This is too important. And they showed up, and I've never heard more laughing and goodwill, and almost couldn't get them out of the building, back to their campuses. So to answer your question, yes, but I had to do a little arm twisting to get them there. But it was a really good thing. So, and they're involved in all of these incentives as well. So,
Mr. Hall, a couple of questions
yes.
on the 37%. Earlier you mentioned that one of the challenges was the starting salary. Mm-hmm. Is the starting salary for the custodian that $10.50
54
1 cent,
cents.
54 cents. What do you feel like would be a competitive starting salary?
Wow, that's a great question. I'd love to say way higher than I would say if we could get it, in my just my opinion, shooting from the hip, if we could get it up to around $11 even, that just sounds a little better. If we could get it up higher than that, would be ideal. But I tell you, these custodians, they work so hard, and if we could get it up to even $11, that would be a big help for us. But,
And currently today, if I start out as a custodian, when am I eligible to potentially have a rate increase? Is it an annual?
generally speaking, it's annually.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't, did you want to talk to that or anything, Amy? Well, I'll just say, generally speaking, it's annually, and whatever the school board approves, if that's a 1% or 1.5%, across the board, that's what they'll get for that. So, and so that's typical. And so, 1% on $10.54 is not a whole lot as compared to, salaries and stuff like that, but, in higher level positions. So, but it's all relative, Sure.
So you have to remember that it's also with no experience. So if they have custodial experience, even though not in a school district, they'll get some credit. So we have similar, and I always compare it to the teacher salary schedule because that's what we know.
Right.
We have a sliding scale. So if that custodian comes in with some experience, we said, okay, 2 years, it's going to be here. But we also try to make sure that someone who's been with us 2 years is a little ahead of that. So sometimes even with a raise, we're going to look at that scale because they talk. We want to
Yeah.
make sure someone who's been here and knows our facilities is certainly very valuable. So we have some internal scales that we're just looking at to make sure that we're being fair and equitable to our staff, particularly these auxiliary positions, that we don't hire some with some experience and get them out of line with the ones that we have. So.
I don't know if there's been any discussion, but you might want to consider looking at like a stick rate. So starting at a certain level, and then if you're here 6 months, it'll raise 50 cents, and it increases the retention. Just kind of getting creative. Is that something that you all talked about?
We have not talked about that. Again, we would have to look to make sure that if at 6 months we're bumping them up, it's not to, higher than the ones who have already been here a year.
Correct.
And so that scale is pretty tight, but I think that's a good idea. We can at least look at that. I call that a hiring incentive. So it's kind of like you get past your probationary period, you get a little bump up of some sort.
Right.
And that probationary period being shorter than the 1 year before
Right.
the raise. But it's something we can certainly look at.
And thank you for those comments. Yeah, this is was a bigger challenge than I realized it was going to be when I came over to facilities. So this has been one that's been consistent year over year. It's been tough to keep good quality staff in place. So driving on with our metrics here, we employee retention of our maintenance staff. You can see that's a different world for retention. Our annual turnover rate, what we established as our standard for that, is less than 5%. Because once again, we get people in, and I'll just say people who have been out in the construction industry, out in the trades industry, they recognize a good thing when they see it. They get over here working with us, and it's they know that they're going to be home with their families at night. They're not going to be going on service runs, generally speaking, all weekend long and that sort of thing. And we do have some benefits over there, so it's worked out better for our maintenance staff. You can see our turnover rates as they go through the years there. One person equals about 4% when you're talking 25 people there. So so you can see we usually we lose 1 or 2 people a year, and typically, much more typically in the maintenance department, it's because somebody retired because they're old and gray and they've been here forever and they're finally worn out and ready to go home. It's not because they found another job and ready to leave us because they're found something better. It's extremely rare that they find another job. It's usually they just retire. So, and of course we celebrate them and have a little dinner and stuff like that. So. So driving on with our metrics to timeliness, one of the things we tried to determine a couple years ago is what's a good standard for determining timeliness for work orders. Work orders, that's a big piece of our world. We get a work order from a campus, we go out. How long does it take you to accomplish that? And, some of them are easier to do than others. Replace a light bulb is different than, paint a whole wing of the building or something like that. So we, kind of keeping that all under consideration. We said, okay, what percentage could we complete within 48 hours by all of our facilities departments? So after a lot of discussion, Renee and I and talked about this with our coordinators, had lots of discussion about this. We said, okay, 85% would be a good number to shoot for within 48 hours, especially after we saw kind of where we were on some of these things. So going back to 2017, 18, it's kind of amazing to me that we're that tightly grouped at that percentage, but it's pretty well hovered right around that 85% mark over the years. I don't think that's because of anything we're doing differently over the years, but it I think this is more coincidental. But so far this year, we're hitting at 84%. So, with that said, hopefully, we can crank some of these out this summer and in a good timeline and get that number up just a little bit to that 85%. Yeah, they're usually not grouped that tightly. And then, of course, the last piece of the metrics is a customer satisfaction. And we've tracked this in a couple of different ways over the year, number of complaints, number of different things, but we decided really the best way to get a feel for that is an actual survey. And so we kept it as short as 2 questions for our customer service survey because everybody's sending surveys out for everything this time of year. So we kept it short and sweet, and here were the results. With 1 being the lowest and 4 being the highest, with our goal being a 3.5 rating or better for both of these. Question 1 was, how satisfied are you with facilities' response to work orders? And so both of these were a little bit, and I'll say this is the first year we've used this metric. We used different surveys in years past. This is the first one we've used for this. So this one surprised me a little bit in that I thought we would get a little bit higher, but we got a 3.325, which is mostly 4s and 3s, and then a sprinkle of a couple of them lower. So we got a 3.325 on that. So sounds like we have a little bit of work to do on that to kind of see where we're missing the mark on that, and we're already having conversations about that. And then question 2 is, how satisfied are you with the facilities department communications in general? Because I feel like we're in pretty good shape as far as knowing what to fix and what we're doing about that. But I wanted to ask this question, and I'm glad I did, because that score was slightly lower for that. And so what seems obvious, and we've committed in Success Team to some of the people around the room too, with our principals and everything, is that we're going to focus on better communications in the future and do a better job of talking with our principals, our assistant principals, about what it is that we're doing on some specific work order that's been languishing out longer than anyone would like, and that sort of thing. So.
Quick question on that.
Yes.
Appreciate you doing the survey and keeping it short, but do you do it like just once per campus, or is it per work order? Like, is it a quick little 2
You're
question?
talking about for the customer survey?
For the survey.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't speak to that nearly enough. No, this goes out once a year at the end of the school year to all principals and assistant principals on the campuses and all directors.
So you get about 38 people responding maybe, or a few more than that.
More than that.
With
right.
the assistants, yeah.
Yeah. So. But yeah, we get a pretty good sampling of it, and we try not to hold it just on the campuses either, because we do the same sort of thing for the directors and everything. So we get the feedback from them as opposed to like every teacher in the school district or something like that. But which we could certainly consider. But right now we just hold it on those leadership level positions.
And thank y'all for starting that this year, because one thing is I visit with principals through the course of time and do campus walks and those types of things, is many times they just, if there's a work order pending, it's not that it hadn't been done, it's just letting me know where we are on that. And so the communication piece, which is something, we've discussed, is very important. Because I remember as principal, I'm okay if I'm waiting on this to happen, as long as you can let me know, hey, we're working on this, we're good, we'll get it, as opposed to not having any clue as to what's occurring. So that's this, like many things I think we've done through the course of this year, we're creating a baseline to see if we're going to get better at this or not, and if not, why. So
it did identify some things we definitely need to tighten the screws on a little bit, and communication is a two-way street too. We're getting a little bit better on that too. Occasionally, we'll have a work order that's closed out by one of our guys that was never even accomplished, and so it's rare. But when it happens, we explain to the offending party how that's not acceptable, and we get that straightened up right away too. So, but that does help when we get some information back from our campus staff about that as well. Otherwise, we wouldn't even know. So all of this adds up to what are the implications for facilities, things going forward. It all adds up, these metrics, to that we do have some areas we need to address. One of them being productivity. We know that our maintenance and our custodial staff are spread a little bit thin. Used to be a little worse than it is, but we're spread a little bit thin. So we know we have to be very, very efficient to keep up with the workload. One of the things we'll have to focus on every year, but we're going to do it again this year, is workplace injuries. The whole workers' comp and injury situation. We've got to, and we're hoping that our renewed focus on safety meetings that we're having once a month will help with that as well. Talking about specific items, ladder safety, electrical, on and on. And we've seen that our timeliness for processing work orders is slipping a little bit. Nothing crazy, but a little bit. So we're going to try to tighten the screws on that just a little bit as well. For monitoring and reporting from the administration level within facilities, that's me and my staff. We'll be reviewing these metrics and making recommendations annually for increasing budgets or staff. I'll be passing that on to Mrs. Drozd as we go through. Say, hey, we could sure use a couple more of these positions. We could use another plumber, another couple of custodians, that sort of thing. And then she would take it then at that point to cabinet to consider the merits and inclusion of these requests or not into future annual budgets that, of course, y'all see in updates. And then, of course, you've got a role in the game, too, as a Board of Trustees, and that's to sit here and listen to us do these full management oversight workshops every 3 to 4 years and hear all of this information and all these metrics that we have to share. So with that, I've finally reached the fourth and final portion of the policy recommendations portion of the presentation, and I'm glad to say we have none at this time. So don't breathe the collective sigh of relief all at once there. But I think we've reviewed our policies, looked them over pretty carefully, and we don't feel like we have any gaps as far as policy goes for what we're doing right now that we feel like would need to be addressed. So with all of that said, that brings me to the final slide and say, what other questions or comments about facilities can we address? And it looks like we still have about 10 minutes to spare to kick a few around. So
I'm going to take 2 minutes, and this will be follow-up for us later. Something I'm curious about is we're completing 84% of our work orders within that 48-hour span, which is down from 86 or something. It hovers at the 85. However, when we looked at the number of work orders submitted, it's from 10,000 to 5. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, that'll be a point I think that we as an administrative team can reflect on and discuss, because we have less work orders. So when you apply a percentage relative to that, we're accomplishing much fewer in number within the 48 hours than we were just a few years ago. So just a thought, but that's just something we can kind of dig into, I think, just to kind of see what's happening to us.
Well, I might have to take a look at those metrics again and see if maybe some sort of percentage number would be a better way to track that.
I just want to say thank you for this presentation, and I love the very specific examples you've given, particularly around, I love seeing what you're doing and that you're communicating to us around engagement and some of the, the areas of opportunity that we see. I would like to, when I see that, and again, I know this is kind of my world, but when I see that 37% in the custodial staff of turnover, I think that's definitely something I'd like to see the cabinet dig into, is what we can do for that, because what eventually will happen, and I'm sure the stress when there's a vacancy that high, that puts stress on the other custodians, and then that again can cause more turnover, and you can see that quickly kind of go out of control. So if we're competing, I know there's a lot of external factors, but I'd like us to take a look at that starting salary, getting creative with it. I think that would be important to help support that, because 37%, it's pretty high.
It's scary.
It's significant.
And I'll just say a little quick follow-up on that, too. One of our greatest challenges every single day of work when we have, during the school year, is for John Hadley and Broderick Ford, our custodial coordinator and supervisor, to rejuggle staff every year. Now, all of our custodians are assigned to a campus, but we try desperately not to get more than a couple of people down on a custodial staff on a single campus. So we constantly look at that and rebalance on a daily, for instance, over at College Station High School, we got down about 5 or 6 all of a sudden out of a 12-person staff. That is killer. And so then immediately we had to scramble around and pull at least one off of every campus that had a full staff and get them over there so that we could kind of rebalance the game a little bit. Because when we do that, we have to go into a short staff schedule, which means that we're not getting everything done we'd like to. We're dumping trash and we're wiping hard surfaces down, but maybe we're not able to vacuum. Or something like that. So, and then of course the next day, teachers come in and we got little stuff still on the carpet, and that's no good for anyone. And so it truly is a daily challenge for us.
So I'm going to dig into this a little bit more. I don't disagree, Ms. Green. We start pushing salary schedules, there's a domino effect with all the other pay grades and other hourly positions. So, and I get and understand that. So this is something, and again, this is probably for cabinet or administration conversation, but I want to bring the note to help remind me. I would be very curious as to what efforts are being made at the immediate supervisory role as far as being cognizant of turnover, and as you do cookouts over here and those types of things, what are helping from the coordinator, what is occurring from the coordinator and supervisory positions to ensure a particular culture or climate of that position? So that would be something I would be curious to discuss later on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one other thing, I went back to that slide to look, and it's been 32 and 30, and then last year and this year it jumped up to 37. At some point, we have to quit blaming things on the pandemic, but that has been very hard on this staff. The additional cleaning, the deep cleaning, the fogging. I think whenever we kind of cut the fogging back from every day late in the school year, I think they all cheered. So I do think that has a little bit to do with last year and this year, is that additional stress. So we have some meetings next week. We're going to be talking about some ideas. So some of you have said some things and we'll share with them. But I think it'd be interesting to kind of see if that we can improve that next year. But I think COVID had a lot to do with it.
No doubt, everyone was above and beyond this year, so
Right,
the
and then,
workload
yeah.
only increased.
The workload, and then when he
So-
started having the turnover, those are things that we couldn't, when he says we have to forego some things, those were not things that we could forego because we published that we were going to do it and we did.
And Amy, valid point, and it's absolutely correct. But this is one that we wrestle with constantly.
It is.
And when I was responsible for them, and I still am now, it was a constant battle. So I guess my point, and this is on us as administration, is that we have to brainstorm and come up with some type of solution so that we're not constantly wrestling with this particular piece. And I don't know what I think it's a combination of a bunch of different things. And I don't think you fix it with one big, all of a sudden, adjustment to pay scale. I think it's a multitude of things because culture can influence how much people are willing to be paid or not. There's a multitude of things, workload. So this is just one that doesn't ever seem to go away, and it's time for us to figure it out. Yeah. So anyway, that's a side note, and I'm preaching, and it's almost 1 o'clock.
I know.
So
Well, and I don't
questions.
think it's unique to College Station ISD. I mean, from what I hear, this particular employment group has high turnover everywhere, but we still want to be better. So we want to be better than the rest of them.
And they're obviously hiring in at the amount. It's just, I kind of think more about the culture and what we can do to really maintain them. I know we're out of time, but I had two other, I thought I had two other issues, and maybe we'll cover them somewhere else. One is, you mentioned with one of your roles is obviously the safety piece, but also working with a lot of the other people in the community. And I've had some discussion recently that has come up about, with the city, about some safety, just continue the safety around our schools. I know that's a big piece of what you have to look at and review every year. And I just, I guess maybe just for the short answer is just really encourage to continue those conversations, and maybe even more purposeful, right? How can we work with the city, we as a school district continue to work with the city to make sure we have the safest roads around our schools, the best ways for our kids to walk, around our schools, sidewalks, and ride bikes around our schools, all three of those. And it really is maybe us more understanding of the needs and really communicating those with the city, because obviously they pay for most of that. And so I just think it's an important thing that we need to more purposefully keep doing. I mean, I know some of it's going on, but I mean, my idea would be maybe a joint evaluation with the district and the city, really evaluating every school for those type things. It just, and I know we're out of time, but I'm sure you're doing some of it, right?
I would like to just say that, and I didn't mention it in this, but we do have a monthly meeting with the City of College Station, the Director of Planning and Development, and the Director of Public Works. And that's where the transportation, the traffic engineer, a lot of those come out of that office. And we have a great little coordination meeting. Used to do it face-to-face all the time. Then we got to doing it on Zoom. But we have those meetings to talk about, hey, these are the things that we're considering as a school district. If y'all can get ahead of us with infrastructure for electrical, we may be a couple of years off, but we're looking at this piece of property maybe for doing something. We'll talk about, projects they're doing, coordinating, like for instance, y'all probably are aware how super congested it got with some of the road work over by CMSAMMS in Oakwood. That was a nightmare over there. We were able to, kept on meeting with them and worked our way through all of that kind of stuff. So, but we have a monthly meeting, and it helps tremendously when we're talking, and we have each other on speed dial for whatever little issue pops up. We call each other and talk. So.
Great, I appreciate that. And again, my thoughts were a little bit more specific about
Right.
safety, so
Right.
I appreciate it. My other thought that I just want to throw out there, and this may be something that you guys can think about, because again, with the bond, you talked about how much in previous bonds were for deferred maintenance. I think it was 12 million, you said, and 5 million, and this one's going to be a good bit more. I'm wondering if it makes sense to look at kind of a deferred maintenance expenditure per asset, dollars of facilities. I mean, I kind of think, obviously what should be an ideal kind of annual budgeted deferred maintenance number over a 10-year period, right? And it obviously depends on how many buildings and assets we have. But I mean, if I'm budgeting for my house, I mean, I know that every few years I'm going to need a new AC, I'm going to need a new roof, so I don't know if we've looked at it that way, right? How much it
We've looked at it in this respect. We have a facilities assessment report that VLK architects have created for us that is a very comprehensive list on every campus and when we expect air conditioning units to die, that sort of thing, and when we expect a carpet to need to be replaced. And so we have an extensive document on that, and we do track that carefully in the background. Funding is the key piece in my world for it. So.
I guess to me, a part of me trying to understand, I know it's getting in the budget discussion, but trying to understand, you're talking all back from 2013, we've only had 17 million in there for if I heard those numbers right. And now all of a sudden we're looking at, can't remember the percentage you said, but I mean, we're looking at more like 50 million, right? Or something like that, more 55 million. It's a huge jump. So I kind of want to understand, have we just really been neglecting things? Or why is it such a big number now? I want to understand that when I'm communicating about this dollar amount and why we really need this. And so somehow I'd like to see that over the next couple of months as we're talking about this next bond specifically.
And I can't speak to all of that, but I can, because I've done bonds with deferred maintenance, and we have 3, I believe, schools with what I call finished upgrades, and that's usually something at 20 years or so, and that's a big number. So we put three of those in there, and they're not going to all be done in a year. So these projects, it is a large number, but it's going to be done probably, I'm going to expect it could take up to 5 years to get everything done. So we did look ahead. The other thing on the budget, because I've been doing them a number of times, and that 2011 year, every school district across the state refers to it. So when we started getting drastic $3 and $4 million and $5 million reductions in a year, unfortunately, maintenance, buses, transportation, those are the first place you look, because we try to go as far away from the classroom as we can. And those districts, they used to have funds in their budget. I would say, not necessarily for all those finished upgrades, because you're talking about in the millions for one campus, but many across the state got pushed to the bonds, and we haven't been able to get them back in because we were trying to lessen the impact on the classroom. So it's not unique to us, but those big projects, and we have at least 3 of them, and then there's a couple of other big ones that are in this package, I think, that ran it up. But as far as the routine ones, John can speak.
My guess is you've spent more than $5 million out of the 2015 bond on deferred maintenance. Just even, maybe that's what it was said at the moment, but I bet a lot of the other things were either deferred maintenance or you've made up for, or you did a lot of them. Because you did CMSAMMS and we did Oakwood. There were a lot of those.
Well, let me clarify that just a little bit. On the original 2015 bond package, if I recall, it was 5.4 million specifically identified for deferred maintenance. And then our practice has been for but it was school heavy. We had a couple of big schools that we did, Pecan Trail Intermediate, Welborn Middle School, which we were able to realize great savings off of. And so what happens with those savings primarily is that all of that's funneled right into deferred maintenance. And so knowing that on the front end it's 5.4 million, it's probably more like 12 or 13 or 14 million by the time all of the savings from all of the other projects are all pulled back together. They're always plugged back into that world. So and understanding that from the beginning, that's why the number was only 5.4. So
Right. That makes more sense.
And Ms. Troll, I don't want to get in the weeds on this, but going back to that 2015 bond, we mentioned Oakwood and the facade,
yes, sir.
things like that. That was probably, I don't know if that was not part of that 5.4. That was kind of its own line item in there, wasn't it?
Those were specific to the schools. That was not specifically identified as deferment. That's a great point.
Okay.
We had several projects that were identified that were not considered or called deferred maintenance in that package. So
I think even on this one, this current proposal, we mentioned earlier that a lot of the technology is going to be considered deferred maintenance, and that's not anything we neglected. It's just we're trying to keep up with the advancements. So, and that was a pretty good chunk of it. I don't have my notebook here, but
I agree.
But, okay. Is there anything else? I just wanted to say thank you. As Ms. Green said earlier, I remember this, probably 3 years ago, vividly remember this, because when you're showing the numbers up here, and I remember being traumatized at how thin the custodial staff was being spread. And I was not the only one in here. I think Ms. Nolan was in here. And to see, I believe I counted 26 extra custodians now. And I realize we've had a couple of new schools since then, but the square foot that they're dealing with now is significantly lower than it was.
It's been a huge, huge help for us, truly.
And so, I mean, while I recognize there's still some things to do, thank you for what you've done, what y'all have all been able to pull off the last couple of years. So, anyway, is there any other comments or questions? All right. Once again, thank you so much, and we are adjourned.